Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this Soviet SU-76M. I'm not totally sure what the M in that name means, but I believe it's the second production run after some faults were corrected. Anyway, this is a 15mm scale, or 1/100th if you prefer, plastic snap kit from Zvezda. There are pictures from 3 angles of the unpainted model, which I like because it better represents what you're getting than a painted model would. There's also other information like the parts count and the length of the model. Simple, but effective. Inside the box we find the sprues wrapped in plastic so that you don't lose bits that happen to come off the sprue. Not usually an issue, but I suppose it could happen. There's also an instruction sheet. This is one of the more complicated Zvezda kits in this scale, so there are more instructions, so they're on both sides of the leaflet, but they're not that difficult to understand and follow. Here we can see that the sprues are moulded in a dark green plastic, and they're rather neat and tidy. The parts on these sprues do look quite nice, though there aren't really a lot of them if you compare with other kits, particularly display models. But for a Zvezda kit of this type there are quite a few parts, and some of them are actually quite fine, like the exhaust pipes. Based on previous experience, this is kind of rare, but I rather like it, and I hope it continues in Zvezda's future releases. The detailing is quite good in my opinion. Obviously it's not super detailed by any stretch, but it doesn't need to be. Its intended purpose is a gaming piece after all. All of the parts here were very neat, and the only real effort I had to put into cleaning them up was removing the burrs left behind after clipping the parts off the sprue. This kit is of course a snap kit, so you don't need glue, but you'll generally get a better fit if you do glue it together. And to start the build, I take the right hull side part and glue on this piece of hull, which probably has a name that I don't know. It mounts nicely into the 2 smaller mounting holes at the rear of the side part. A little pressure and it's in place. Then we can install this ammo rack. It's not a big rack, but it's still a nice rack. Ha ha ha, boobies. It did take a little pressure to get this into place, but it did go in. Very good. The other hull side part was a little bit more fiddly, at least in getting these stowage boxes mounted. Being a snap kit, the mounting tabs are pretty tight, and I found it hard to press them in because they sit just above that mudguard part. Again, after a bit of fiddling, I got there, and that's what matters. On the inside, I install another ammo rack. This one is a little bit bigger than the other, and it's pretty neat. Often with a rack like this you need to scrape a mold line off the tip of each round, and I didn't even notice one here. Then a spare road wheel can be installed on the rear wall part. This is easy, unless you can't locate the mounting pin. A fine butt plate indeed. Next comes the internal framey part, which mounts onto the 4, quite obvious, sockets for it on the hull bottom part. I'm pretty sure I installed this correctly with the thicker pins going towards the floor. The 2 pins protruding out of the side should face rearward, which is the end without the upward angled part. The forward wall of the fighting compartment goes on after that, like so. The wall part is offset and should line up with the left edge of the floor part. It is then time to attach the hull side parts to the bottom. The central framey part makes this very easy, though I found with the right side part I had to nudge the wall part we just installed to get everything to sit together nice and neatly. Obviously I'm gluing this so that it all stays together. Then I tried to install another small ammo rack. How about another rack joke? That certainly didn't help. This one was kind of hard to get into place because of both the tight fit of the mounting pins and the fact that it was in a corner. I ended up cutting off the pins and just gluing it into place, which is effective, but you could also install it onto the floor part before adding the right hull side. The rear wall and left hull side come next. The way to do this is to kind of sandwich the rear plate between the 2 hull side parts. There are small tabs on the rear wall for this, but no pins. It doesn't look like there would be a way to include pins and have an open fighting compartment, so this is how it works. It is pretty easy to do though, and of course glue will ensure that it all stays together and the gaps are eliminated as best they could be. Now it's time for gun, or at least the gun breech. First we squish these 2 parts together. There's a guide pin in the middle, and you should be able to tell if you've got the parts lined up pretty easily. If it isn't lined up, this end part won't go on. This is clearly the part that will connect the gun barrel to the gun breech. Next, I install the gun sight. This was actually pretty fiddly to press into place, and I was quite concerned that I would break it. It actually went on a bit better once I added glue. What matters though is that it's on. Just be careful handling this. I can imagine it being very easy to break, and who would want that? You? Well, you do you. I don't want it to break. Before we can install that assembly, we need to put the upper hull part on. This mounts into the 4 pins on the central frame part and isn't especially challenging to get into place. There was a bit of a gap at the front, but that was easily taken care of with some glue and our dear old friend pressure. I then mount the gun breech. The mounts for this are these triangular parts, and they have differently sized holes in them so that they only go on one particular side of the gun. It occurs to me now that I could have glued them both to the gun and then that assembly onto the hull. I guess hindsight is 20/20. Oh well. The way I did it was to glue the left mount to the hull and the right mount to the gun, and then fiddle around with it a lot more than I really had to. The way I did it was fiddly and kind of annoying, and the whole time I was worried about breaking off that gun side. But hopefully me doing this the less efficient way helps you choose to do it the other way. I test fit with the fighting compartment part, and once I was satisfied with how everything was going to fit, I glued that into place. There are some slight gaps where this part contacts the rear wall, but I'm not especially worried about those and they should be fixed quite easily. Or they could just be left there because Russian armor. I guess it makes sense to install the main gun next. You can see this part has a slight bend to it, which isn't ideal, and I did try to carefully bend it the other way, which did take care of it a little bit, but it's still not perfect. Installation of the gun is quite easy, all you really need to do is press it into the breech part. I put my finger on the rear of the breech to prevent it from shifting due to the application of pressure, but if you've let the glue bond, that shouldn't be a problem. Once it's in place, I add a bit more glue, and it should stay there. If it doesn't, I'll be very disappointed. You can definitely see the bend in the gun when you look down on it. It looks good from other angles though, so it's not too big a problem. Then come the exhausts. There are 2 of these, and I'm led to believe that's because there are 2 engines in this vehicle. They were a little bit fiddly to get into place, and I suppose it might have been a bit easier if you put them together prior to attaching them to the hull, but with the customary nudging they eventually go together and look pretty good. I have to say I'm pretty impressed by these parts. They're probably the finest detail I've seen on a 15mm Zvezda kit, and I have built a few of those. The result is really good, and they should stand out quite a bit when the model is painted. Very nice. To improve mobility from 0 to more than 0, I install tracks. These go on really easily, which isn't surprising. There are 3 guide pins, which is enough I guess, but I add glue where each suspension arm part contacts the back of a wheel, just for a bit of extra strength. The tread detail on these is a bit lacking, which is the norm for this kind of kit, and you can hide it with mud or something like that if it bothers you, but they do look pretty good from the side, and I would argue that that's a bit more important. Anyway, that's the 15mm scale SU-76M snap kit from Zvezda completed. And I have to say, this is a great little model. Zvezda's 15mm stuff is definitely improving, and this isn't even their newest model. I think it's from 2018. I'm pretty sure I talked about this last time I built a Zvezda kit, but the improvements and differences between their newer kits and their earlier ones like the Panzer IV or 38T is very obvious, and I'm sure they'll just keep getting better and better. And while they are improving, they're still very easy to put together. I guess most 15mm scale gaming models are, and especially snap kits. So I guess it's kind of obvious that they aren't going to be hard to build. Even though this one did have its challenges, it wasn't too challenging and it was nice and fun to put together, which is exactly what I was looking for when I built it. Sometimes it's just fun to do something quick and simple where you can very quickly see results. I'm sure there's now somebody clacking away at their keyboard who only wants extremely difficult and painstakingly precise building all the time, and I guess that's fine, but just shh. Anyway, this is a nice little model, and if you're looking for an SU-76M, or one without the M, I'm not aware of the external differences, and you can always just proxy or whatever anyway. If you are looking for one of those for your 15mm Soviet forces, I think you would do well to choose this kit. I'm not actually aware of any others available other than the Battlefront resin and metal kit, and if you've been around for a while you know how I feel about resin. This kit was quick and fun to build, and I managed to put it together in one relatively short stream. So I would imagine if you're just building this without trying to multitask, you could whip up a swarm of these in an afternoon, or one in just a few minutes, whichever you need. If you have any questions or comments about this kit, or anything else, put them in the comment section below. If you want me to answer in a video, find the latest Ask a Herbert Erpaderp or the appropriate channel on Discord and ask there. If you've built this kit yourself and you would like to share pictures, the Discord server would be the place for that, and we would love to see your work, SU-76 or otherwise. If you've not done so already, why not subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a patron or YouTube member, or maybe just come say hi on Discord or Twitch. And if you're feeling really helpful, share this video far and wide. That would be rad. Links to all of my things are in the description below, and as always, I shall return soon, so until then, be excellent to each other, and thank you for watching. Farewell.